All right, so welcome to a quick JumpRope preview. This is the gradebook that we've been using for the past 2 years in order to implement mastery-based grading. And what we found is the system has a ton of benefits, mostly in terms of being able to plan with mastery-based grading in mind. And I'll show you how that works real briefly. And then we'll look at how learning targets get organized in the gradebook in a way that's really different from a traditional grading system. So here we're at the homepage for our world history teacher, Miss Huko, and we're just going to use her account to look at how she organized her classes. So we'll start with the tabs up at the top. These are the tabs that you use to toggle between different functions within the gradebook. You'll mostly be using the plan and the grade tab, but we'll start with courses just to get a view of what things look like. So all of Ms. Yuko's scheduled courses are to the left here in this column, and I've selected World History, her 5th period class. And once you do that and you click on Mastery, you'll see this view, which is all of her students in that class, and then their overall grade in the course. JumpRope uses colors to code for grade ranges. So anything above 80% is going to be dark green. Anything 70% to about 79.4% is going to be this sort of pukish yellow color. And then anything below 70% will be coded red. And each of those colors just indicates whether you've met mastery, are approaching mastery, or have not met mastery. And what we found is this color code is really helpful for teachers and for students and for anyone looking to intervene or observe a student's progress in a class to really quickly see where they are in the course and what they've mastered and have not mastered. Now, obviously, this overall grade doesn't give you very much information, but as you can see, there's a drop-down arrow. When you click on a student like this student, you'll see all the units that Ms. Yuko has created in her gradebook, and then for each unit, you'll see the corresponding grade for that unit, sort of. So all these grades are then combined to make the student's overall grade, which is in the first drop-down. If we look inside Unit 6, for example, we'll see that she's created 4 learning targets within this unit. She labeled them 6.1 through 6.5, and each of those also has the cumulative mastery score for that learning target. So this is where you start to get a little bit more nitty-gritty and see where the student is struggling the most in terms of learning targets, so that we can intervene as a teacher or as an advisor or as a student themselves. So in this situation within Unit 6, if Shayla had to really focus on improving one thing, it would be learning target 6.2, describe and analyze the stages of the Holocaust. And that's because here she has a red bar and has a 61% mastery. If you click on that, it then opens another list, and this list includes all of the assessments that were used to collect data on whether she had mastered that learning target or not. So she took a Holocaust quiz on April 5th, and it looks like it's showing up, everything's showing up here twice for some reason, I don't know why. So just pretend that's only once. So she took a Holocaust quiz. That quiz tested her knowledge of being able to describe and analyze the stages of the Holocaust. She took a Unit 6 exam, which also tested her ability to do this, and then it showed up on her final exam as well. So in this case, Sheila had 3 opportunities to master this learning target within Unit 6. So that's sort of the overall view of what a gradebook looks like from the overall view of a teacher once they put grades in, and this is what students will see also in their view. Now I'm going to go through and show you in the Plan tab a little bit how that is set up and how that's created. So we're here in the Plan tab. Within the Plan tab, there are going to be 3 headers that take you through the planning process. We start with selecting a unit. I selected World History as the course. Over here, her units show up, and I'm just going to choose Unit 6 again, World War II. Once I've selected that, it takes me into the unit view of entering learning targets. We're in the second part of the process. And here is where you can type to create new learning targets. So I'm going to create one right now and say 6.6. I can evaluate the effectiveness of the German army in World War II. All right, so that's my learning target. I press save. It's going to save that learning target. Now it exists in my gradebook. I have the option over here of weighting of how this learning target is going to be calculated. We're not going to talk about that right now. This is something that we'll discuss later. But there are different ways to calculate a score for each learning target. All right, the next thing we're going to do is skip over to designing assessments. So you click on process part 3. And that brings us over to a list of your learning targets you've created. See here, this is the one I had created. When I click on it though, you can see in the assessments list, these are all the assessments she's made. This learning target is not associated with any other assessments yet. If I click on 6.1, I'll see that 6.1 is tested on quiz 1. It's tested on the causes of World War I DBQ, and it's also tested on Unit 6 in the final exam. So when she created these assessments, she wanted to assess students' ability to do this. And as I click on each of the different learning targets, you see that it changes. So if I have created this learning target and I want it to be associated with a new assessment, I'll create a new assessment here. Let's say I'm going to make a quiz. I'm going to call this quiz evaluation of World War II. I'm going to save it. Now that I've created that quiz, I'm going to associate it with the learning targets I'm going to assess on it. So the questions I include on this quiz are going to be about this learning target only. So I've associated it only with that one. If I'm going to include questions that assess other learning targets, then I'll also click those. So now this quiz, Evaluation of World War II, is associated with 3 learning targets. So when I create that quiz, I need to make sure to include questions or assessment items, whether they're short answers or essay prompts, that relate to these learning targets. So when I grade it, that's the way I'll input the data. Finally, I'm going to take us over to the grade option here. And we're not going to get too in depth with this, but I will select the period, World History 5th period. I'll select Unit 6, World War II. And then you'll see here over to the left, all the assessments are showing up in the left column. So if I click on the quiz I just made, Evaluation of World War II, it's going to prompt me to choose a date to administer it. It'll always do that. So I'll say I'm going to give it today, August 4th. And now it lets me into the actual place where you'll input the data. So I've graded all the quizzes somehow, and you'll see up here in the top sort of x-axis of the table, we have each of the learning targets that I associated with this quiz. So 6.2, 6.3, and 6.6. So when I put a grade in for a student, first of all, it's always out of 100%. So you're going to, no matter what points are worth, however you create your points on your quiz, you're always going to convert that to a percentage in order to put it in the grade book. So if this quiz was 10 questions, and of those 10 questions, 5 of them were 6.2, and the kid got 5 out of 5, I'd put 100. If there were two questions about 6.3 and they got one correct and one incorrect, that's a 50% on that learning target. And then in this final learning target, 6.6, there are 3 questions left, and if they got 2 out of 3 of those correct, I'm going to give them, a 67. So as I populate this sheet with how students did, it's going to change the overall mastery color at the top for each learning target, so I can keep track of how students are doing overall on that quiz. And then it's also going to show here how the student did overall on that quiz based on what you put. So I'll do a few more here. We'll say Daniel did really well, so we can kind of see how that looks. So this is the view when you're inputting grades, and ultimately once that's saved, and it saves automatically every about 5 seconds, but you can manually save it like I just did. Now this will show up in the student's view of their grade. All right, so that's all for now. You'll play with JumpRope a lot more later, but that's basically how it works. And if you have questions, we will answer them.